Let's face it, hiring help is not easy these days. Let XenTegra Staffing help you find the right person for the right job. Head over to XenTegra.com/XenTegra Staffing to find out more and let us staff your people needs. Welcome to another Citrix Session with your host, Andy Whiteside and Bill Sutton, your source for all things Citrix.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 33 of the Citrix Session podcast. I'm your host, Andy Whiteside. I got with me the Director of Services, Delivery Services, and Consulting, Bill Sutton. Bill, how's it going?
Well today, Andy. How about yourself?
I am enjoying a Monday, relatively quiet Monday. I'm probably going to jinx myself here, but I had a great weekend and weather was perfect and had a great time hanging out with the family and looking forward to getting some stuff done this week. I'm many hundreds of emails in the hole. I went on vacation for 2 days a couple weeks ago, and I don't know if I'll ever climb out.
Yeah, that's always fun. I know when I'm gone for a few days, you get stuck in that hole there of trying to get out of those emails. It's a tough thing sometimes.
Yeah. Well, we're lucky enough to have with us Sean Donahue from Citrix. Sean is, we practiced this beforehand. Sean is responsible for kind of marketing around global alliances with Citrix, which I know that includes Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and others. Sean, how's it going?
I'm doing great, guys. How are you doing?
We're good. Did you want to clarify your title for me? Make sure I got it right and what you cover?
Let me make sure I've got something that is innocuous and that nobody can fact check. How about that? Yeah. So let's go today, being a Monday, let's say it's Alliance Marketing Evangelist.
Alliance, okay. And what those alliances, I named a few. Did I get them all or are there more?
Oh, there's a lot more. We cover the whole Citrix Ready program too. So everybody's familiar with the big name billboard names, the Microsofts, Google, Amazon, HPE, Cisco, and this is almost like thanking people during your wedding toast because you're going to leave someone out. So there's a whole flurry of partners as well. Then you get into the Citrix Ready ecosystem, and there's 30 plus partners in there too. So I do anything and everything that's a joint messaging activity, shedding light on what Citrix and our partners are doing, and just bring a greater awareness to Citrix as well as the ecosystem.
I think you got an interesting job, right? Because you get to go do the fun stuff, I think, but at the same time, you've got to always be creating new and inventive ways to do what you do. It seems like a blessing and a curse.
It certainly is much more of a blessing, and thankfully, I get inspiration. Not always from the bottom of a wine bottle, but, inspiration comes in many forms to those of us who are lucky enough. So in a time like this, like we were saying in the pre-show, I'm finding that pinning your career around traveling to various conferences and events, and I went to probably 12 to 15 a year. Well, when a pandemic hits and you're quarantined at home, that's not always a great thing. So we had to be very creative. We had to be very agile, and we've started alternative video series. And we're doing some things now around highlighting the helpers, it's called. And we're finding people who are in our ecosystem who are they're finding creative ways to give back to their communities and to those who are less privileged in very creative and unique ways. And I've interviewed people who have set up food kitchens, who have taught me about virtual food drives, who have volunteered time with people and mentoring. And it really, that type of stuff has brought a whole new light and a whole new perspective to me. And I'm just so blessed to be able to do something like that and to do it for someone as minded as Citrix is.
Well, that's great, John. And it kind of will tie in really really goes what we're going to talk about here. I have a nonprofit that I'm in the legal trying to set up. I don't know if you know about this or not, but using the Google product called Neverware Cloud Ready, where you convert x86 devices, we convert those and in mass. I've got about 30 we're going to donate this week to various nonprofits to give away to their people, to give them some form of a computer to get online and educate themselves and can communicate and add skills. So that's exactly some of the things that we're doing at XenTegra on the side, or at least I am personally, and XenTegra obviously supports me getting things done outside of my day-to-day job.
Well, had I known about that, I would have leaned on you to be a guest before now. So now, while we're recording, Bill, you have it on tape. I'm going to ask Andy to be my guest on an upcoming Highlight the Helpers to talk about this non-charity.
Yeah,
that would be great. Yeah.
Well, glad to do it. Yeah, I'm actually working with my 18-year-old son. He's in charge of it. I just every day spend a few minutes telling him what I need him to get done that day. But I'm trying to get them involved.
Yeah, I spend hours a day telling my 15-year-old son what I need him to do, and nothing gets done. So that'll be a new experience for me.
Yeah, so if you can see what I'll add you to this group on LinkedIn that we have that we're trying to, between GoFundMe and LinkedIn and Facebook, we're getting started. Again, I'm caught up in legalese trying to get an official nonprofit approved by the U.S. government. That's where I'm stuck right now. But as soon as that's done, we're going to start selling T-shirts and start going nationwide and collecting computers and re-imaging them with a Google operating system and getting them out there.
Wow, this is such a crazy coincidence. And I know we didn't plan on talking about this, but I started a nonprofit back in 1997, 98. And the intent behind that was to get laptops, which were not very common back then, donated and then outfit them with dial-up modems that would slide into the side of the PC and then plug into an RJ11 for the telephone wire and hand them out to people who were kind of in home, couldn't really get out because their immune systems were compromised. So what a crazy coincidence that was.
Yeah, well, I'd love any help you can give me on this. I'd love to have your involvement if you could. You're probably a really good person to have evangelizing and talking about this to both corporate sponsors who could give money and laptops and PCs, as well as letting the community know that these are out here. We want to do it nationwide, and we want to do it market by market. You probably could help us.
Yeah, that sounds good. So let's definitely do that.
All right, so the goal today was to go over this blog you wrote a couple weeks ago around using GCP to do some testing, some scalability testing right here. So the name of the blog was Speeding Clinical Testing Times with Citrix and Google Cloud Platform. I shoved the platform on the end. The reason I did that is because I think Google has some of the most, maybe the widest array of offerings in our virtual app, desktop, compute, cloud space, EUC space, because they can provide a back end, they can provide an operating system for the edge, and they can provide applications in the middle, including that application known as a Chrome browser, which pretty much ends up everywhere these days. So, Sean, let's jump into this and let's try to figure out what you're highlighting in this blog.
Yeah, let's try to figure out why the word platform's not in the title of that blog too. I'm going to have to talk to my editor on that. But this is, God, what an amazing story this was. And this guy, Ulrich Christensen, from, I think, Copenhagen, was such a great, you want to have a good guest on your podcast, talk to Ulrich. He's such a great personality and such a great story to tell here because, Oncology Venture is one of these environments, is one of these companies that creates tailored cancer treatments for individuals. So if you've ever experienced or known anybody who's experienced cancer, it's just absolutely, it's brutal. I've been impacted by it just so deep. I've got two sisters, my mom, all passed away of cancer. And to think about the treatments that they went through, which were not tailored to their individual cancers necessarily. It was kind of a protocol that the doctors would, go through the book and approach with chemotherapies and radiation or what have you. But Oncology Venture, I don't want to pretend I'm an expert in cancer, analytics, but they take testing samples from patients, and somehow they run these tests and they come back with treatments that are tailored to the individual and the type of cancer that they're currently battling. And you think of the impact that something like that has on people, it is staggering that that's the type of work they're doing. And then you talk to Ulrich, and the numbers that he tells me, they just, completely leave me speechless. And if you talk to my wife, she will tell you that is not a common occurrence to get me to shut up and be at a loss for words. But Ulrich was to do these analyses when they were on-prem in their lab in Denmark, and they've got locations around the world, and they're in Boston too. Go Red Sox. Go Pete Downing. Hey, Pete. They will to do the testing on-prem. He was able to do 8 tests simultaneously. And I'm like, all right, so that's, you think about it, that's on-prem, and you've got, I'm envisioning, and this is probably not accurate at all, but I'm envisioning a rack of computers, or even a blade system, and you're spinning up 8 VMs simultaneously, and you're running this deep analytical testing, whatever magic it is that they do. Then they go to GCP. And they go to a cloud-based platform, and they can go from 80, and the marketing folks would say they went from 8 to 80. Well, that's not accurate, because they went from 8 to infinite. They could literally spin up as many of these instances, these workloads in GCP as they need. And they could just run as many tests simultaneously as they had demand for, because the scalability of GCP enabled them to do that. And then they create their images with Citrix Workspace, and they could just keep popping through machine creation services. They could just keep popping up these VMs on demand. And now they're going literally however many tests they need to run simultaneously, which has, from a tech and a geek point of view, we all love cloud and we love the scalability of cloud, but put it into the human terms of the cancer treatments now that can be created and tailored for cancer patients. And now it has a significant human impact to what they're doing. So the story is it's one of my favorite stories. And the fact that they're in Boston only adds to it. As you know, I'm a Boston-based guy, or was.
So Sean, and now you live in Raleigh, right? Is that?
Yes, my wife tells me I love it down here.
Yeah, you do. Raleigh, Charlotte, I'm in between both. I love them both. Hey, so is this really a story of using MCS and the scalability of GCP to spin up workloads? And then did they actually access these workloads via some type of Citrix session, or was it really just a matter of MCS and scaling when GCP to do back-end processing?
No, one of the things that they wanted to do was also to standardize on a desktop. So instead of having all these, many disparate, desktops that people could be accessing, they wanted to standardize on a desktop. That's why they decided to go with Citrix virtual apps and desktops to get that standardization. So it doesn't matter what the clinician is using for an endpoint. And, let's face it, they could grab a Chromebook, they could grab, any number of devices that they wanted to, because once they've got Citrix Workspace, what used to be called Receiver, on the endpoint, spin it up, attach, boom, they're into a standardized environment that's a central IT controlled, desktop. So that was one of their goals. And then Oncology Venture went to like a Citrix Summit or a Synergy, one of those two events where Citrix announced that they were going to have machine creation services available on GCP. So now they went from standardizing desktops as the route they had to take, and they did do that, to then bring in the scalability of GCP and MCS as the added, spice to the soup. And then they even brought in Citrix Files so they could do secure data sharing from their on-prem data center to wherever their clinicians happen to be around the world. So it was kind of the trifecta of everything that came into play for them.
Yeah, I love the idea of somebody, thinking outside the box and what you can do with the elasticity as well as the availability of the cloud, and then using technologies what Citrix has brought into that mix to get the most out of it. That's just a great story. Bill, thoughts or comments on that?
Yeah, I agree with what you just said, Andy. I was going to bring up the point that I guess when they were able to get, 8 tests out of a workload on premises, they were constrained, I guess, by their hardware, the scalability of their hardware. And when you go, like you said, Sean, when they go to GCP, it's pretty much infinite, within bounds, but the bounds are pretty significant. So the ability to spin up those workloads on demand and then spin them down when they're not using them gave them that kind of scalability. Is that really what resulted in that?
Yeah, it is. And there's a couple of things that you mentioned, Bill, that, fire off the old synapse in the brain here, which is, the scalability. Now, of course, when you have GCP and other cloud providers as well, I don't know, am I allowed to talk Azure on this? But if you have other cloud providers as well, I created, and you guys maybe can explain this one to me. There's something out there called a walking video. Have you seen these? There's this thing on LinkedIn, and there's these people, they create videos, short 2-minute videos of themselves walking around their neighborhood.
Oh, I've seen them. Yes, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and they give little like sales tips or techniques or something like that. And I'm hearing about these things, and they're popular, blah, blah, blah. And I watched a few, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to make a walking video, and I'm going to talk about cloud elasticity and compare it to a sweatpants. You need the elasticity of the sweatpants when you're growing. And then in theory, when you lose the weight, the sweatpants are supposed to shrink back down. Now, I've never experienced that. But the walking videos, they get a lot of attention. People loved them, and they're exhausting because you're actually walking in Raleigh heat. It's 95 degrees, and I'm out there walking up and down my sidewalk making this video. So the elasticity definitely was a big, big benefit. But then also what a lot of people don't take into consideration is the auto scale.
Right.
Because these cloud vendors, they love it. When you burst your cloud, when you burst your compute up into the cloud, you spin up all these VMs and they bill you based on consumption, and that's great. But what a lot of people don't realize or remember is that if you don't shut those VMs down, if they're not being used, you're still burning that consumption. And then at the end of the billing cycle, you get hit with a big consumption bill for all these VMs that people haven't used. So Citrix Autoscale, has to be pulled into the mix so that those VMs can be autoscaled down too, as well as up, but autoscaled down so they're not being hit with the bill.
Exactly.
And then speed-wise, so another little nugget that Ulrich threw out, which I thought was amazing as well, is that he went, or Oncology Venture went from doing 1,500 analyses in 2.5 weeks. That's how long it took them to do 1,500 of their testings for cancer treatments. They could then do 1,500 in an hour with that combination of Citrix Workspace, Autoscale, GCP, and then, of course, Citrix files for the data sharing of the results.
Wow. And Sean, if I could pause you there, I mean, that's solving challenges, whether it's personal, Facebook communication, whether it's business. That's what IT does. We get a lot of us propeller heads get tied up in the technical of it, and really what Ulrich's done here is he's solved a need, a business need, and a human need using the technology, which is the right order of looking at it versus a lot of folks who look at technology being the driver. It should be the enabler of whatever the driver is.
Exactly. And it could have been all too easy for him to say, you know what? It takes us 2.5 weeks to do 1,500 tests. And that's it. That's the story. That's the end of the story. He could have accepted that as just fact, but he recognized this opportunity where he could leverage this tech to really make an impact on not only his clinician lives, but then the impact on the patient lives that this has too. The speed, from 2.5 weeks to an hour to get test results. That's I don't want to be dramatic here, but I would say that's life-saving.
Well, it is. It is life-saving. And John, what I've got on the screen here, I don't know if you can see my screen, but I pulled up this statement that happened, I don't know, a year ago now, where, the world's decided that data is more valuable than oil. Of course, oil in the U.S., at least a month ago, was rock bottom. But my point is data has become the most valuable thing on earth, even though it's not all that tangible, but it's real. And analytics from that data is what's going to, help propel us to make changes into the future.
Mm-hmm. And there's so much data out there, too. If you look at some of the companies that are wrangling just the seas of data that we have available to us.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Sean, what else do you want to cover here now that we've got the microphone to talk about Citrix and Google and noble causes that people have? What else can we cover while we've got you? That might be a bad question to ask you, actually.
That could be a very bad question, but we don't have many sports going on here, so I can't brag about Boston sports teams in this podcast. But
you mean the Patriots after the post Brady era?
Post Brady is going to be fine. We got Bill Belichick still. Brady's, that'd be like me playing football right now.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be pretty. I think I've got the aches and the pains of Gronkowski and maybe the gray hair of Tom Brady.
Here's the way I'll leave it. I've got a young guy that works for us that's a big Patriots fan. Never's had a losing season, never had a 500 season. When I was a child, I was a Steelers fan, and the only thing, post the Super Bowls of the late 70s, the only thing that always made me feel better was at least they weren't as bad as the Patriots. And then, of course, all that flipped over. But it'll be interesting to see what happens over the next few years, how people take, not being superior. Yeah. And maybe they will be. But man, the bar is really high.
Well, I'll tell you, this is a little insight into my personality, and maybe we can analyze this on a future podcast. But lately, Fox Sports and I think NBC Sports have been playing, classic games, the most infamous games in sports history. And I literally watched the game 6 of the 86 World Series, the infamous Bill Buckner bloop down the first baseline. I watched that. Right. In its entirety. And then the next Saturday, just a week later, I watched Super Bowl, 31, Bears Patriots, where the Bears had the biggest victory in Super Bowl history when Tony Eason and Steve Grogan were still the quarterback of the Patriots. So I lived them originally. I remember those games distinctly when I was a teen, and then I forced myself to rewatch them again. And guess what? It turns out in your 50s, those losses suck just as bad as they did when I was in my teens.
I think there's an analytics story that should be told in there somewhere.
I think there's a counseling story in there. Why would I watch those things? It's like I had to remember how bad we were, how bad we had it.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's definitely true. Well, Sean, I appreciate you coming on and telling a story beyond just the tech, but how the tech was used, specifically around Citrix and Google Cloud Platform, GCP. And just, glad to have you join us. And as you have other ideas and other blogs, we'll keep an eye on it, but feel free to reach out and let us know that you want to talk again. We'd love to have you.
Sounds good. I'd love to come on the show anytime.
And plus we need to keep you busy too.
I speak this from the heart, in all honesty, and it's not just because I have friends who work over there, but XenTegra is definitely one of my favorite partners to work with. The enthusiasm, the zeal, as well as just the mastery of the technology from the different vendors like Citrix and Google and Microsoft et al. Is just second to none. So XenTegra asked me to do something. I'm all over it. Definitely always love working with you guys.
Well, that's great. Thanks, Sean. And we know we've got to keep trying and continue to get better. I think that's probably the thing I love most about the company we've started here is we're not going to settle for where we are today. We're going to keep going.
Yep.
All right, Bill, anything else before we let Sean off the hook here?
The only thing I'll say, Sean, is I miss baseball and I miss my Red Sox. I need them to come back, man.
Yep. Soon enough.
Thanks for joining us today, though.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Citrix Session with your hosts, Andy Whiteside and Bill Sutton. A special thanks to our guests, podcast produced by Pete Downing. Head over to XenTegra.com/podcast to listen to all podcasts in this series.